Right now, Europe is on pace for its worst wildfire season ever recorded. Not one country, not one region. The entire European Union has already burned through more than 500,000 hectares of land since January, and it is only the first week of August. As of this week, the official EU tracker puts the number at 500,852 hectares burned across the bloc. To put that in perspective, that is already above the 381,444 hectares that had burned by this same date in 2025, and 2025 was the worst fire season Europe had ever recorded. This year has already beaten it, and it is more than double the 20-year average for this date, which sits at just under 200,000 hectares. But the hectare count is not even the most alarming part of this story. The most alarming part is where the fire is going next. Because for the past 2 weeks, this story has been about Spain, France, and Greece. Those are the headlines you have probably already seen. What almost nobody is telling you is that while the world was watching those 3 countries, the same heat wave that burned them crossed a border those countries do not share into a country that is not even part of the story yet. Keep watching, because by the end of this, you are going to understand exactly how fast this is moving, and why the countries burning right now are not the countries anyone expected 2 weeks ago. Let's start with how bad this already got, because you need to understand the scale of what already happened before you understand what's happening now. In Spain, fires west of Madrid, in Avila and Toledo, merged into a single front that grew to roughly 80,000 hectares by the end of July. Officials called it the worst blaze in the Madrid region's history. The fire in Avila alone became the largest wildfire ever recorded in Spain. In France, the fire tearing through the Gironde department burned roughly 42,000 hectares, one of the largest fires France has seen since the Second World War, and forced more than 220,000 people out of their homes in Gironde alone, with tens of thousands more evacuated in the Landes. Here is the part that should stop you. As of this week, those fires have eased. Every evacuated community in the Gironde has already been cleared to go home. Spain's fires have calmed enough that many evacuees have returned too. The story you think is still breaking in Spain and France already peaked, and it is over a week old. So if Spain and France have calmed down, why does the headline say Europe's worst season is still getting worse? Because while the West was catching its breath, the fire moved east. Greece was next, and Greece is where this story turned tragic. A massive wildfire broke out west of Athens, near Porto Germano, and by the time it was mapped by satellite, it had burned more than 14,000 hectares across the Attica and Boeotia regions. More than 100 homes were destroyed. Over 1,000 people were evacuated. More than 250 of them pulled off the beaches by boat because the roads out were already cut off by fire. And then, on August 2nd, 2 firefighting helicopters collided while battling the blaze near Satha. 2 crew members died, a Greek pilot and a Danish national. That fire has also gone quiet since, 6 days after it started. But the 2 people who died fighting it are not a statistic that eases with the fire. Now here's where you need to pay attention, because this is the part that connects everything. Back in late July, before any of this had reached its worst point, the head of the European Union's own Emergency Response Coordination Center stood in front of reporters and made a prediction. Her name is Maria Zuber, and she said the fire risk was, quote, already moving to Greece and also Central Europe. She went further. She said Italy would face serious risk at the beginning of August. And she said, if the fire reached the Iberian Peninsula on top of everything else, her words were, we will have all Europe on fire. That was not a guess. That was an operational warning from the person in charge of coordinating Europe's entire emergency firefighting response. And this week, it is coming true in real time. Italy is the first domino she named, and it just fell, not with fire yet, but with the exact conditions that produce it. This week, every major city in Italy was placed under the highest level heat alert the country issues. The same heat wave scorching the rest of the continent just set a new national temperature record in Austria. Italy is not burning yet the way Spain and Greece burned, but it is sitting in the exact conditions, extreme heat, dry vegetation, no relief in the forecast, that turned those countries into disaster zones 2 weeks ago. Italy right now is a country waiting for a spark. And then there is the country nobody was talking about 2 weeks ago at all, Serbia. As of this week, firefighters are battling multiple wildfires across Serbia. One blaze has burned at least 700 hectares inside the Deliblato Sands Nature Reserve, not far from Belgrade. The Serbian army has deployed helicopters to fight it. More fires are burning near the town of Kraljevo. And here is the detail that makes this different from everything you just heard about Spain, France, Greece, and Italy. Serbia is not a member of the European Union. That record of 500,000 hectares you heard at the start of this video, the worst season the EU has ever recorded, does not even include what is currently burning in Serbia. The fire does not check which countries are in the EU before it crosses a border. It is burning in a country that isn't even part of the record everyone is talking about. That is what spreading to new countries actually means this week, not a bigger fire in a country you already know about, an entirely new country outside the bloc coordinating the response, catching fire from the same heat wave that started this 3 weeks ago. So let's talk about why this keeps happening. Because the explanation is the same every single time, and once you understand it, you'll understand why nobody expects this to stop soon. Europe has been getting hotter and drier for years, but this year the pattern accelerated. The heat wave that produced these fires didn't just push temperatures up, it pushed vegetation dryness into territory that makes fire spread almost uncontrollable. Dry vegetation doesn't make fire risk go up gradually. Past a certain threshold, it goes up almost exponentially because everything around a spark is already primed to burn. That is why a fire that starts as a small blaze in a nature reserve outside Belgrade can become a national emergency requiring military helicopters within days. That is why officials in Madrid, in Bordeaux, and now potentially in Rome keep saying some version of the same sentence. We cannot get ahead of this until the weather itself changes. And the weather has not changed. Here's what that means for the people actually living through it. As of this week, this fire season has killed at least 17 civilians, 6 firefighters, and 2 helicopter crew members across the continent. At its peak, roughly 330,000 people were forced out of their homes in Spain and France alone, not counting the thousands displaced in Greece and now in Serbia. These are not people who did anything wrong. They lived in landscapes that have existed for generations, and this year those landscapes turned into fuel because of conditions completely outside anyone's control. If you are in any of these regions, Spain, France, Greece, or Italy, or the Balkans, follow the instructions of local civil protection authorities immediately when they're issued. Do not wait to see how bad it gets before you leave. In this exact crisis, the fires have repeatedly moved faster than official evacuation orders could keep up with. The people who left when told to leave had time. The people who waited had to be rescued. If you're watching from somewhere unaffected and you want to help, verified relief organizations working in these regions need support that will outlast this news cycle by months, possibly years. 500,000 hectares burned across the EU, a new national fire record, broken before the season is even over. At least 25 people dead, hundreds of thousands displaced, and now a country outside the European Union entirely, burning from the exact same heat wave the EU has spent 3 weeks trying to contain within its own borders. This is not slowing down. This is spreading. Stay with this story because the heat wave driving it has not broken yet, and neither has the season. Let's go deeper on what's underneath these headline numbers, because the detail here is what explains why this season broke records that took decades to set. Start with Spain and France, because what happened there in late July wasn't just bad luck with weather, it was the culmination of a pattern. The fire in Avila didn't just burn a lot of land, it became the largest wildfire ever recorded in Spain's history, in a country that has dealt with serious wildfires for decades. That's not a record you break with an ordinary bad summer. France's Gironde fire being the largest since the Second World War means you have to go back more than 75 years to find a comparable blaze on French soil. And underneath that fire sits one of the most economically significant landscapes in Europe, Bordeaux wine country. In late July, as the fires were still active, a wine expert told CNN the grapes hadn't yet ripened enough to absorb smoke damage, describing them at the time as like very hard, small peas. A winemaker and chemist consulted separately explained that as grapes ripen later in the season, their sugars can bind with the phenols in wildfire smoke, producing what's called smoke taint, a permanent, unfixable flaw in the finished wine. The fires eased before that became the vineyard's reality this year. But it is a reminder of exactly how close one of the world's most valuable wine regions came to a different outcome. Greece's tragedy deserves more attention than a single headline gives it. The fire near Porto Germano produced a smoke plume that satellite imagery showed stretching more than 70 kilometers southeast across the Saronic Gulf, visible from space, drifting over open water, far from the fire itself. The helicopter collision that killed 2 crew members happened while they were actively working to keep the fire from reaching the western outskirts of Athens after the fire had scaled a mountain overnight. That is not a routine firefighting accident. That is what it looks like when a national capital's outer edge is genuinely at risk. Italy's highest level heat alert is worth explaining in plain terms, because highest level heat alert isn't just a warning label, and it triggers real changes. Restrictions on outdoor work during peak hours, extra emergency medical staffing, and heightened monitoring for exactly the fire weather conditions that turned Spain and Greece into disaster zones. Italy hitting that alert level in every major city at once, in the same week Austria set a national heat record, is the clearest sign yet that the heat driving this entire crisis hasn't peaked, and it's still expanding geographically. And that brings us back to Serbia, because this is the thread worth watching over the coming days. The European Union's own tracker, the one responsible for the record of 500,000 hectares you heard about at the start of this video, only counts EU member states. Serbia sits outside that system, so does the rest of the wider Balkan region. If this heat wave keeps pushing east, the next fires may break out in places with even less coordinated emergency response infrastructure than Spain, France, or Greece had. Those 3 countries had the EU's rescue fleet, mutual aid agreements, and pre-positioned firefighters to call on. A country outside the EU does not have automatic access to that same coordinated response. That is the detail that should worry you more than any single hectare count. The fire is moving into places with fewer resources to fight it, right as the season is already breaking every record on file.